Welcome to another edition of Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor, broadcasting and legend personalities. And I hope you've enjoyed it. This is the last in the series. We've talked, of course, to Bobby Plump. I mean, what better high school sports legend in Indiana can you get? Bob Lovell, Greg Rakestraw, and today, a legend just right down the road from us, Jasper, Indiana, Walt Ferber. You know Walt, you've listened to him for years on WITZ radio. Volleyball, basketball, baseball, soccer, football, you name it, he's done it. And it's come to an end at WITZ within the last couple of weeks as he's retired from that. But he's got plans going forward, and he's got a story to tell. And that's why we've invited him. Getting to know your Indiana neighbor, broadcast legend, Walt Ferber, right now. Welcome to another edition of Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor. As we've sidetracked that a little bit, we've got a terrific neighbor right here, but he's part of our project in our series, Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor, broadcaster, and in this case, also legend, Walt Ferber. I don't know that he needs an introduction, but Walt, thank you so much for making the drive up to Lagodi today.
It's a pleasure. Beautiful drive today. I have the utmost respect to you. We run into one another a lot, especially during basketball season, and it is certainly a pleasure.
Well, thank you. We're in the Lagodi City Public Library, and we thank Darla Wagner and that group, as we always do, for hosting. And this is quite a setup, this library, isn't it?
It's very nice. It is extremely nice, and the town of Lagodi should be very proud to have a facility like this. This is state of the art.
Yeah, we are. For those of you who don't know, well, let me first tell you, the Walt Ferber has been at WITZ Radio, sports director, program director, you probably name it, right? Since 1980. And he just retired from there 2 weeks ago?
Last day was June 17th.
Yeah.
So it's been
less than that.
Yeah.
Right. So 42 years at WITZ, and some before that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but how's retirement treating you?
Well, so far,
11 days in.
It's really good. And the thing that has taken the most time to get used to, since I was 14 years old, I've had to get up early in the morning, and with my duties at WITC, I was up at 4:45 in the morning, and I still have an office at home in Holland, and I would go down and start my work day in my roll top desk downstairs, and would then prepare stuff and go in to leave for work. And now I get to sleep in at least a little bit. We have a new puppy in the household.
Oh, well, but you get up during the night.
And Josie expects me to take care of her, to take her out for her first walk at 6. So when you've been getting up at 4:30 or 4:45, sleeping until 6 feels really, really good.
Especially now because it's daylight at 6 o'clock. It won't be for long, but it is. But he's retired from WITZ, but he's got a lot of things going on. We'll talk about those in just a little bit. But I just happen to think Walt has he's got the limit of friends on Facebook, right? 5,000, that's the limit. So those of you who, if Walt would happen to share this and you would happen to share it, you have no idea who I am. My name is Greg Bateman, and I am the play-by-play voice for Lagodi Sports on WRZR, and that's why Walt and I have met on an occasion or two. And I do a series of what I call Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor, people of local influence. We sit down and talk to, and people who have a story to tell. People seem to enjoy it. But I wanted to, in this case, expand it a little bit and talk to sportscasters, kind of right up my alley. But I know we've got a lot in common, Walt. But the first thing I want to ask you about, on Facebook, Walt will throw up almost every day what I'm going to call Ferberisms. Okay, that's a new name, Ferberisms, and really dad jokes, basically, is what they are. And if you're friends of Walt on Facebook, you've seen all of them. But I'm going to go through just the last 3 to give you an idea of what Walt thinks is humorous, and some of us do as well. You ready? These are the last 3 that I saw. All right. I was attacked by a herd of cows. I'm okay. I was just grazed. All right. What do you call a bruise on a T-Rex?
Dinosaur.
A dinosaur,
Dinosaur.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Why don't ants get sick?
They have little antibodies.
They have little antibodies, so you get tricked. But you know what? I got one for you. It's based on your bio. Your bio says you were a double major in school, telecommunications major, and a marketing major, right? Does that make you a telemarketer?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and that was actually one of my first jobs. So that's good. See, you could be a dad joke maven yourself
Oh,
on that.
believe me, I could. I could, yeah. Telecommunications. I mean, don't think they call it that today, do they?
No, they have changed it. I'm a graduate of Indiana University, and it's called the School of Media right now.
Yeah.
And the school has evolved since those days. I was there from '74 to and graduating in '78, but it was telecom, and it was in a little building just about 800 feet away from the library, and that's kind of where I helped me get started. But the major that I have, they don't have anymore. I think I broke it. They found out that if you could turn up like I did by having the double major, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But I did it in telecom. I took the communications courses and also took a core in the business school. Now, I'm so old, they didn't call it the Kelley School of Business back then. It was just the Indiana University School of Business.
Right.
But that was good.
Well, let's go back even further than that. I like to tell people that you remember the Ralph Edwards show, This Is Your
Oh,
Life.
yeah.
You know, you watched that when you were younger. Well, this is the Facebook version, okay, YouTube version, and so we're going to go back. I know your formative years were in New Albany. Is that where you were born?
Was born in New Albany. It could have been Texas. My father was in the Army, and they moved back from Texas to Indiana just before I was born. So I was actually born in Floyd Memorial Hospital in New Albany.
What did your parents do?
My mother was, and well, maybe one of the reasons that I met it, my mother was in marketing for Thomas Industries for almost 40 years before she retired. That is a company that did lighting, and they expanded. They also, in kind of an ironic thing, and they do old time radios, which I haven't. So, but I got to know a lot of people in the marketing business in the Louisville area because of my mom's uh, contacts with Thomas Industries, and my father worked at Ford Motor Company for
Really?
a long period
In
of time.
Louisville?
In Louisville, yeah.
Um, your mother, you said, passed away a year ago. This
A
weekend?
year
is it?
ago, July 4th of
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah. Was she in New Albany at the time?
She had moved uh, after the passing of my stepfather, Bob Coast. She moved into a transitional home in Sellersburg Tradition, so she was in the same vicinity.
Okay. But she got to follow your career.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I'm sure she appreciated what you did and heard some things about you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Good and bad.
Well, in New Albany, it was just the point that there were times that she was able to hear WITS,
Yeah.
certainly on 50,000 watts, 104.7 FM, and the app she was able to listen quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah. So is it Walt Ferber or Walter Ferber is your given name?
Well, my given name is Walter Ferber, but 99.9% of the people call me Walt. My full name is Walter Ray Ferber, but the only people that had the ability to call me that was my mother, and there's my stepmom Arlene, my father's second wife, who's still alive. She has the ability to call me that, and an Aunt Dorothy, but no one else.
Okay.
No one else in the world can call me Walter Ray except those guys, and everybody else. I'm just Walt.
Okay. So I'm going to be your mother for just a second. Okay. What was 12-year-old Walter Ray Ferber like? Are you okay with that?
No, I'm fine with that. Honestly, I was kind of a nerd,
Okay.
and in some ways, I still am. I always had an interest in broadcasting. I remember when I was little, I had my little radio station in a tent
Oh, you had your own. Okay.
well, my make believe
Sure,
radio
sure.
station, and I was big into theater, and many of my friends from theater in New Albany are still very very good friends of mine, and I was big in theater in junior high school, and high school was in a number of productions. I had a friend of mine from theater that ended up doing Du Bois County Bombers baseball with me for a couple of years, William Wells. So I had an interest in that, and I knew uh, I wasn't the best athlete in the universe. I mean that I was in some ways ended up being a fortunate thing, and I realized at a place where I was at, if I wanted to be associated with sports, talking about it on the radio was a pretty good thing to do. So I got my foot in the door in New Albany. We had a daytime radio station. Does not exist anymore. It was owned by the Langfords, who owned WRAY in Princeton and WREY in New Albany. I walked in the front door and I bugged the guy there, Larry Price, and he gave me a job. And what I did, it gave me a foot in the door of doing everything associated with the broadcast. If I could sell the broadcast, I could do the broadcast. So I got a little foot in the door in that, and I walked into a place called Flynn Realty in New Albany, and sold them the entire package of being an exclusive sponsor. And we did. I told you it's a daytime radio station.
Yeah.
Basketball games are at night.
Yeah.
And we took a big Wallen sack tape recorder that weighed about 125 pounds, and it took about 7 rolls of tape to do a basketball game.
Yeah.
So you would do the game. I did them by myself. You would do the game, and then you would watch when you were getting close to the end of the roll, and you'd have to time that to a timeout. So when you got to a timeout, you would rewind the one roll.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Put a quick and then put the other roll on. And but that's the way you did sports in 1972.
Yeah. And
I did that, and I was bitten by the bug. We had a radio station in my high school, WNAS in New Albany, and I had 2 very very good mentors there. Chuck Roll, who was for old farts out there to remember, in the Louisville market, he was the anchor on WLKY Channel 32, and he retired from that. He was at WNAS for a year before he ended up going and being a voice on public radio in Ireland. Not Ireland, Indiana.
Not Ireland, Indiana.
But in Ireland, and another fellow that had a background at WREY, Lee Kelly, became my general manager there. And he was a very close friend, father figure, and mentor until he passed away just about a year and a half ago. So I was bitten by the bug. Yeah. I started early, and I knew what I wanted to do, and went to Indiana University and was off and running.
Wow. So you knew exactly what you were going to do from that 12-year-old time frame, or at least hoped to, and you followed through and just retired.
Yeah,
for the most part. Daytime radio, by the way, for those of you younger than us, sun up to sundown, right? I mean, sun up to sundown. That was at AM radio, and they were only able to be on sun up to sundown. So in the wintertime, not much daylight,
but it helped.
Not much airtime.
It helped out too in the summertime. You're on longer in the summer, and I actually got to do some hours on the air because they would have the other jock, Jeff Warner, who would get off the air at 6, and then I would be on the air until the end of the day. So it was a great learning experience for me. The station's dark now, and the place where it was is now a fire station. And but it was great.
Think of all the businesses that you've knocked on the door, and because as an account executive, and like you said, they told you, hey, if you can sell it, you can broadcast it. I'm sure you still get that even today.
I took that. That's what I do. And that's one reason I've done as many different sports as
Right.
I can. And you know this being
Right.
local radio yourself, that for local radio to be successful, it's got to have a niche. And WRZR, which was owned by my nephew up until
Larry?
just a little while ago, you got to be local. You got to do things that people in the local community want to hear. You're great with that with Lagodi Sports, and I was fortunate enough to be at an area that loves their local sports. So we not only did football, basketball, but we also did baseball. And some years our baseball broadcasts were our highest grossing broadcast of the football and basketball with the 6 state championship.
Absolutely.
Also added softball and also
volleyball.
And
you did soccer,
boys and girls soccer. And it's actually a very good. I had done one soccer match before. I was at WTTS in Bloomington for 5 years, and was very lucky there that I worked with Joe Smith, who was on the IU network, and he retired after last year. I did all the stuff that I got Joe's garbage this week. I got the stuff that Joe didn't want to do, and the boss comes in one day and Mr. Bob Holman and says, "I'm sending you and Mike Morris to Tampa to do the NCAA soccer championships." And it was the first year that Indiana University was in it.
And big time stuff.
Yes, I said, "Mr. Holman, I appreciate that, but I know nothing. I mean, nothing about soccer." And he said, "I suggest you learn before you get to Tampa." And wanting to continue, because I needed my job while I was continuing to school. There's no, in 1976, there's no internet.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, you would just Google it now.
Go to the library.
But I went to the Indiana University Library and studied on soccer. Anyway, we did that. I don't think we made too many people mad. And fast forward to that, one of my best friends and truly one of my best clients over that period of time, Keith Hettinger of Hettinger Beverage Distributing. He distributes Budweiser, and he also owns several brands of soft drinks. He owns Dad's Root Beer. So, I mean, that is it. And his son, Joe, who is an attorney now and helps Keith in the business, comes to me and says, "What's it going to take to get soccer on the radio?" You got a really good client. You don't want to make your really good client angry. No. And I figured I was just going to put a proposal together that would be large enough that he would say no and we would go on. Well, I put the proposal together. You put it, you make it as fancy as you can. I drop it off at his secretary, and in about an hour and a half, phone at the radio station rings. He goes, "We're good."
Yeah, what?
And I went, "Okay." And it was funny. The general manager at WITS, Earl Metzger, station owner, great man, comes into my office, which had used to be his office, and says, "What in the world is this I hear about us doing soccer?" And I flipped the contract over to him, and he picked it up, and he went, "Wow, we're doing soccer."
Yeah.
And we did it, and I believe as I stopped last year, we ended up doing soccer that was 16 years for me. We ended up doing both boys and girls. And by doing the soccer, you never know how this stuff's going to work out. I also do some freelance work for ESPN, really low-level ESPN. But there aren't that many people in the country that do soccer. So I've got to do a large amount of Missouri Valley Conference soccer over the past several years. So it actually helped me not only in WITS, but in TV also.
It's another opportunity.
Yes.
So today you could go into any business and it's, "Oh, Walt, what do you need?" Yeah, let's do it. I want to go back to that very first sales pitch at Flimmer. Was it
Flynn Realty?
Flim Realty. You were probably 19.
No, I wasn't 19. I think my mom actually drove me there because I didn't have my license yet.
Even better.
I had just gotten it.
Okay.
Well, it's what you do, and I wasn't the sharpest stick in the pile, but I knew that if I looked at companies that had been favorable to New Albany High School in the past, those would probably be some pretty good folks to go to. Mr. Flynn was an extremely nice gentleman. So I called, got an appointment, went in, told him what I was doing, the fact that we were going to tape delay some New Albany basketball games and have them on the air the next day, and that I was offering him an opportunity to be associated with the New Albany area and to be associated with New Albany basketball. We were pretty good. We ended up winning the state championship in '73.
Pretty good.
And he bought it. And I gave him and it's not something that we wouldn't think about doing today. We got exclusivity on the broadcast, and he paid premium amount for that. So that was my start, and it's something that you have to be ready for rejection, but it is something that I very much enjoyed doing, and I still help a few companies out with consulting. And you go in, you learn as much about the company, and you're not selling them something. What you're doing is you're going in and you believe in the product that you have. And I was fortunate enough to have a great product for 42 years. If you believe in the product, you can take the product and your expertise, and you can cause them to make more money. And when you do that, everybody's happy. And that's kind of that's kind of the way. I've never sold anybody anything, but I've helped by learning about their business and learning how what I do can benefit them and getting a bigger market share and bringing more money in for them.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I'm just thinking back in the day whenever, now let me get this straight. They're going to play on Friday night, and you're asking people to listen to the game on Saturday
2
morning.
o'clock Saturday afternoon.
2 o'clock
If
Saturday.
If it was Friday, we played 2 o'clock on Saturday.
But it's not as crazy as it sounds, because it's Indiana high school basketball.
Yeah.
It's New Albany basketball. So even those who went to the game would be interested, because it's not like games are all over the radio necessarily.
And you didn't have cable like you have today. You didn't have all. I mean, on a Saturday now, you can look and you can have hundreds, literally hundreds upon hundreds of things that you can listen to or watch. But in 1972, that was not the case. Cable was there in 1972. There was no ESPN.
Right.
ESPN did not come into effect, I believe, until 1980. So there's no ESPN. If you were in the Louisville area, there was high school basketball in Southern Indiana was big, and you had that. You had the Kentucky Colonels ABA basketball team, and you had the University of Louisville Cardinals. So that the amount of stuff available was not quite as big.
I remember, Walt, probably not that early, but maybe later in the 70s. Well, actually, had to have been mid-70s, because I was still in school. WITZ and WRZR did this later. It wasn't that uncommon, but you would have your primary game, maybe the Jasper Wildcat and Evansville Memorial, whoever it was. And then right after that, you would have maybe a Lagodi game, who was never on the radio, right?
Yeah,
so you'd wait till 10 o'clock at night to listen to Lagodi Line basketball.
Well, I was originally hired at WITS as an air personality. And one of the first things I got into was we had a Hall of Fame broadcaster in 1980 when I got into Bob Simmons, and I learned a lot from the late Bob Simmons. And I'm not going to crack the lineup of Bob Simmons and Bob Boyles. I mean, that was at the time I was just happy to be having a job where I could eat, and but I plopped in, and the Earl said, "You did some of that radio, that play-by-play." Yeah, I did a lot. I did the stuff Joe Smith didn't want to do. I did a lot of Bloomington South, Bloomington North, and Edgewood games in Bloomington, and I was in Columbus a very, very short time, and I got to do Columbus East football the year that Blair Keel took them to a state championship. So I said, yeah, I've done a lot of sports. So I got put with Al Pillsbury, who's got still has a lot of ties to the people in Lagodi. I got put with Al in the tape delay game. So there were years I actually started doing with Jasper stuff more prevalent in the 90s, the early 90s. But in that decade of the 80s, I did a ton of Northeast U Boys, Forest Park, and Lagodi basketball. Al and I were in Lagodi, I would say the first 4 or 5 years I was here, we probably did 80% of the Lagodi basketball games on tape delay. And I still love coming to Butcher Arena, but I love coming there, and we did a ton of it. And I will tell you, there's been only one coach in my life that has intimidated me, only one. And I worked.
He's going to be our Indiana neighbor, right?
Yeah, yeah. I worked with Joe Smith for WTTS, which means people may think I'm going to talk about Bob Knight.
Yeah.
I loved working with Bob Knight, and I always did my homework with him. As long as you did your homework with Bob, he was great with me. But Jack Butcher scared the heck out of me.
Well, I mean, what experience did you have that led to that, or just his demeanor?
It was just totally his demeanor. I remember in Bloomington, getting to my little Mazda car and driving down to do the Bloomington North Lagodi game. And he went down to interview him, and he had that tie stuck in, like he did. And he's like, "Who are you?"
Okay.
But no, I mean, and at that particular time, and I talked to a lot of coaches back in that day, he was the most intimidating dude that I have ever been around. And we have since that time become great friends. And I always love seeing Jack when I have the opportunity to. But in the late 70s, and that would have been probably 75, 76, 77, which were some pretty doggone good Lagodi teams. He scared the dickens out of me. It was.
Now, were you? I'm trying to think of the time frame, but fast breaks on Sunday. Was that prior to you? Did you have?
I never cracked the lineup in that because it stopped, I believe, about 94. Bob Simmers was the host of that, and Al Pillsbury took over when Bob Simmers left. I ended up being on the program a few times, and I always was a big part of the program, and we did this every year, the sectional pairing show. We had a huge program, usually it was at the Dutchman Inn, though there was one year that I actually went up to the IHSA office, and this was before the Champions Network as it is now, and I called the ping pong balls as they came out. I called them into.
So they do ping pong balls they used at least back then.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, but we always had and it was one of my favorite things of the year. The sectional at Huntingburg Memorial Gym, single class was as fun as it gets, and we would have all of the sectional coaches around a big table at the Dutchman. And when the pairings came out, we would talk to all the coaches about it, and they would all end up eating a good meal. And
so they didn't know until that show.
Yeah, they found out who they were playing.
Oh, that's an idea. Maybe we'll try that.
As they were sitting around
now they're with their teams.
Yeah,
but that back then they were with you.
Yeah, we were sitting around, and it was usually a coach and one or two of his assistants. A lot of times the entire staff would be there, but it would always be at least all the 4 county schools, and we would normally have him. But Jack was down with us on a number of occasions.
If Coach Butcher was on there on a Sunday, Lagodi was listening.
Yeah, yes.
I mean that's the thing.
But no, we had that, and Fast Breaks was an outstanding program, and up until the time I left, there's still. I would say it's not out of the realm of possibility at some point in time that they may end up bringing that back.
Yeah, no, I would love to do that, even if it's on a tape delayed. I mean, you could do it on a Wednesday and maybe on a Sunday, but live would be.
Well, we did. I mean, I did actually. You know how good of friends you become with the coaches when they're coaching.
Sure, absolutely.
And I've done Jasper basketball. Some of my best friends in the world have been Jasper basketball coaches, going back to Ken Schulteis, who I talk to this day on a regular basis. Tim LaGrange, who has got the coaching bug, he's back in coaching again. He's the superintendent at Southwest, and they were could not find the right basketball coach, so Tim stepped back in.
What school is it?
Southridge.
Southridge. Okay. Oh yes, I did see that.
Yeah, Tim stepped back in at Southridge, and for the last 15 years, John Gable has been there. Mm-hmm. He came from Evansville Mater Dei, where he won a state championship. And John, from the time that he started doing the games with me, he came up every game after the broadcast to talk about win or lose, how the team had done. And every week we would record a program that we would set down, and it was 15 minutes in length, and we would air at 4:30 on Friday afternoon before the ball games on Friday night. So I did that for 15 years.
So what's it going to be like in August when football cranks up and you've got your radio on, you're driving around, you're at home, somebody else is doing Jasper football on the radio?
Well, and I will tell you this, it's going to be different because I love being around Tony Lewis. He's a great guy and a great coach, but I'm probably going to be doing football somewhere.
Okay.
And
you'll be busy on those nights.
I have some things that I have a number, and I'm throwing enough stuff on the wall that I will be doing something either on the high school and or collegiate level on weekends.
All right. Okay.
So if I was at home 7 days a week, Melanie would probably shoot me. But I am working. And one of the things that I said when I retired, I'm not retiring altogether, but I'm going on 66 now, very, very soon. And radio, when you talk about the fact that I'm programming, have 120 plus accounts that I'm taking care of, taking care of staff schedules, because WITS is still one of the few stations that has live personalities on pretty well all the time. Make sure that schedule is taken care of. Doing 7 sportscasts a day, filling in when one of those air people are not there. And last year I did 310 events. And at this age, to do what you do, I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning. I was in the station by 6:30, taking care of the accounts during the day. Would come home and grab a quick bite, and then probably be out on the road driving somewhere to do an event. And after that, you're not done anymore because you're multi-branding. You know how that stuff goes down. And when we get home, I'm taking care of social media. I'm videoing part of the game,
and as you're doing it,
and video the game as I'm doing it. Download the video, edit the video, make sure the video is up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and make sure that it goes to the web page. So if you're out and the game is a 7:30 ball game and you're on the road, you're driving, you're home at 10, and another couple hours on that to take care of social media, and you're back up at 4:30 the next morning. That I'm retiring from. I love doing sports play-by-play, and I would like to go, and my goal is to go from 310 events a year down to about 50 or 60. And it's still kind of a work in action. I've had some very, very nice people that I've talked to. I know you talked to Greg Rakestraw. I'm excited about, and I've worked for Greg since the inception of ISC. Since he went, I've done a few events for him every year, and I absolutely love it and love his crew. So maybe doing a little more with them. I have freelanced with both the University of Evansville. I was the voice of the Aces for 2 years, and that got to be a little too much even for me with the schedule. Step back from that, but I still do some TV for them. I've done more freelancing for Indiana State University. I hope to continue to work for them, and I've got another couple of things that are kind of, so we'll see. I got a saying, the good Lord takes care of the stupid. So
and talented.
But I'm looking to see how it goes. But I'd like to be, and I like doing the Valley stuff. One of the big things I like about this, my wife Melanie, she is certainly an e-ticket to heaven, because she's put up with me for 42 years. And the thing about doing the Valley stuff that I did, whether it be for Evansville or Indiana State, if I had a WITS event to do a high school game before the Missouri Valley, they would give me a university car and I would drive. And so when I would do that, Melanie would go along with me, and we would have, I've always taken her to exotic places like Springfield, Missouri, and but you're out and you're not in Dodge, and and they're leaving the conference now. But I've enjoyed. I think one of the highlights, Loyola has been a part of the Missouri Valley Conference for a long time. They're moving out of the conference now, but there was usually a couple of trips to Chicago during the year.
Took advantage of it.
Anyway,
So let's go back to 1980. So you were in Bloomington till 79, graduated college, worked at Bloomington Market for 5 years. How did the Jasper position become available to you, and why did you move to this direction?
an absolute, like I said, God takes care of the stupid. It was an absolute fluke. I went to, after that, I had an opportunity. I also worked, my wife says I should get anything printed, a business card that said anything for a buck, Walt. While I was doing
Today
this,
it would be $10.
yeah, but I also helped manage a disco in Bloomington during that period of time. The back street Silver Dollar.
Yeah.
And I also worked part-time on the weekends at Tri-WY in Columbus. Well, after graduation, I stayed working at TTS and Tri-WY and the disco. But at some point in time, I figure it's time to go out and
get one job.
So I go and I interviewed at double station WTOT, WJQ in Panama City, Florida.
Oh, okay.
And was going to go down there, and it was an eye opener. Football's pretty big in Florida.
Pretty big.
The high schools have huge stadiums, and the basketball gym seat like 50.
Yeah.
But I was going to do high school football and basketball and junior college basketball at Pulte Junior College.
Okay.
And I went down, talked to the family that owns the station, and I was going to program a couple of stations, do mornings on a country station, and basically oversee an automated top 40 station and do the sports. And I came back, and my buddy in Columbus said, we got a full-time opening in Columbus. The afternoon guy is going to leave, and he said, we'd like you to do afternoons. And and so I went, well, you won't have to move all the way to Florida. So I decided to take the job, and it depends on whether I'm smart or not, how that went.
Are you single at this time?
I'm single at that time, yes. And small stations at that time have been known to have money flow difficulties. And the station I was working for had some of those problems, and I had a check returned to me. And that's what I figured it was probably, I didn't make, and so, I'm still working, and as many people in that era do, I'm reaching out and I'm looking to some other people, and I have a chance, and I talked to a young lady who was a program director of a big rock station in Indianapolis, and I was working. They were going to put me on overnights in Indianapolis. Well, it still pays, but during the negotiations, they went, wait, I think we have an AM station that the morning guy has left, and we think rather than put you there, we'll just put you in the job in the mornings. And in 1978, it's not like today. The AM dial was pretty hot yet in 1978, and they offered me an opportunity to do morning drive in Indianapolis. So I officially gave notice in Columbus, and after that, they had an opportunity. I got my contract signed, which you learn lessons at a young age, and They had an opportunity to bring in a fellow that had been blown out of a radio station in New York City who had a better resume than I did at that time. So they bring him in, and I've given my notice, so I'm out of work. And it's the last time I was out of work until 10 days ago. And I had a friend that did afternoons on the other station. It was my big competition. I did afternoons on Tri-WY. John T. Howard, who's been a pretty big name in the business, did afternoons on WCSI in Columbus. So we're having an adult beverage at one of the local watering holes. And I got a buddy, Gene Kuntz, that has just taken over as program director at Wits in Jasper.
Yeah.
You ought to give him a call. And I went, well, you want me? I said, I was just going to do mornings in the number 19 market in the country, and you want me to go where? And he said, you got to eat, and what you do? And he said, what you do is you go down, you get your act together, so to speak, you get a tape together, boom, 6 months, you can go to Indy or Chicago or wherever you want to go. And I came down, and the station was ran, and it's still owned in part by 3 families. It's not a conglomerate, and Earl Metzger was the owner, and he came in and treated me very well. He asked what I was making in Columbus, and he laughed, and he always took care of me. And I found out that where I was at, if I wanted to work hard, and I've always worked hard, that if I worked hard there, I could make pretty close to as much money as I would make in Indy or Chicago. And you don't have the ratings worries that you have in Indy and Chicago. So I stayed, and was getting a little comfortable. I got my teacher's license and started to substitute teach a little bit during the day. And the Northeast Du Bois was very good to me early on, and I taught at Du Bois probably between 100 and 120 days a year the first couple of years that I was there. And I met my wife, and I always say I overshot my headlights. We met. She was my banker.
Mm-hmm. So is she from Jasper?
No, she is from Hayesville.
Hayesville.
So yeah,
the big city.
And we got together and had our first date, and we honestly have not been apart since then. So I'm making pretty good money. Wife is from here. Adopted her son from another marriage, and we had our other son, Jonathan, and we got married in 81. Johnny was born in 82, and the rest is history. Because there is none, there's no better place to raise a family than our little piece of heaven here in Southwest Indiana. And you look up and you raise your kids, you get them up, you get them grown, get them through college, try to allow them some opportunities. You look up and it's 42 years later.
You're sitting here with a guy like me.
Yeah.
How many times, if any, over the course of the years, because radio was very demanding if you were to make any money, did you either have another opportunity or just think about, I've got to get into another profession?
I don't think it was ever that. I had one opportunity. I actually had an opportunity. My wife has always been my agent. This through a fluke thing at we always go to a Major League Baseball game every year. We did when the kids were growing up. And through that, and a lady my wife met, I had an opportunity, and I actually had a shot to do Louisville Redbirds baseball. And because at that time, a fellow by the name of Jack Buck was the voice of the St. Louis Cardinals.
My boyhood idol.
And Jack was starting to slow down a little bit. And what they were looking for was a person to do Redbirds baseball, and for 36 or 37 games a year, when Jack wanted a day off, you were brought up from the AAA ball club to do the Cardinals game. And I interviewed, and honestly, it looked like I was probably going to be going to the Cardinals, and I got a call, and it's to this day, my kids laugh whenever they see Joe Buck on TV. Joe decided to get into broadcasting. And the rest, and you know, that's okay. I would not trade what I have done for anything in the world. And, you know, he's been vastly successful. And I think in my own way, I've had a pretty doggone good life here too. So it's all, but I had that as the major one. And I have had other opportunities to, where people have asked if I would be interested in taking off, and Melanie and I would sit down and talk and crunch the numbers and sit and look what the move would be, and the most thing we would look at is how it would affect Nathan and John, and we wanted to make sure they had stability, and there was never anything that was overtly better than what I was doing, and so, you know, it's all good.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Your reality would have been my dream about. I started out in radio as well. Then went into.
You did okay.
Well, it became more of a hobby. But in my early years, that's what I went into, and my dream would have been to get into a big market. Of course, my dream was to. Well, of course, eventually be a St. Louis Cardinal baseball announcer, but how do you do that? Yeah, maybe Louisville Redbirds. I thought, well, how can you do that? Well, you're telling me how you could do that. So that's very interesting. But I also have thought back many times that, you know how radio is. If you get into a bigger market, that doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to work out for you. So I'm the same way. We landed back here in Lagodi, Indiana. Couldn't have had a better life. So God takes care of.
I never finished this part of the story. The job in Indianapolis, where I was going to be the morning man.
Yeah, until you weren't.
The other guy came in, and you know, I'm kind of grousing about it a little bit. And 6 weeks after I would have started on my first day, the Arbitron books came in. Numbers weren't what the station wanted them to be. Big conglomerate, not a family, big conglomerate. They fired everybody at that station, and it became automated big band music. So if I would have taken the job, I would have ended up within 6 weeks looking for another job, because they would have booted me out on my posterior. And I will say this for which Earl Metzger was like a father to me. And God bless Gene Kuntz. He has sat back, and he's taken my stuff for 42 years, because he was originally the guy to hire me. And Gene allowed me to, when I had the opportunity to become voice of the University of Evansville, he allowed me to have the
Well, welcome back to part two. In part one, you heard that Walt was big into theater in school, and that's what you call an intermission that we just went through. And we thank Walt for coming back up today at the Lagodi Public Library. And Walt, it's certainly a pleasure, but I can't thank you enough again to hopping back on, and we'll finish our conversation.
I always love talking to you. You know that. I love our friendship, and it's good to be back in Lagodi today. As I said last time, I love this library. It is certainly an excellent facility, and the town of Lagodi should be very proud for this and a number of facilities they have.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Walt. When we left off part one, you were talking about the flexibility that your general manager, Gene Kuntz, allowed you to do other things, and in particular, in this case, broadcast games from the University of Evansville.
Yeah, he did. It was something, and it wasn't a secret to him that Doing Division I college basketball was always a dream of mine. And when I had the opportunity to do it, we sat down and had conversations about it. And uh, we between the two of us, we made it work. And it's something that I'm extremely glad that I had the opportunity to do, but could not have done it. And I can't think of many general managers that would have allowed that to happen.
Well, that's again down at the University of Evansville, Division One. That's high tech. You've done a lot of low tech stuff, as I have. I've seen you carry around the picnic table and sit it down, bring your tape recorder, and whatever works, works. But you had an opportunity at a big time university that you were telling me yesterday that almost got away from you from the broadcast side, right? Tell us about that.
You mean about Cameron Indoor?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it was. It's one of those bucket things that, of going in there, having a chance to do a ball game from Cameron Indoor Stadium. Just the whole experience was one that I'll certainly never forget. You're on the bus, and first of all, going in, it was something that I've never seen anything like it. They camp out in Shashevskyville,
Yeah.
and they when you get there to the gymnasium in your bus, there's like 3,000 people outside of the gymnasium that are waiting, and you have to get. It's like really the size of. It's not as big as the Lagodi High School gymnasium. It's not a big gym, and you get in. You have to go into a side door, and you had to go through like I don't know, a couple of thousand people that they were Duke fans, so they weren't necessarily happy to see us. And my eyes must have been big as saucers. Blake Simmons, who's a member of the team and is a good friend of mine to this day, looked at me and he said, "It's going to be fine, Walt. You just stay in sight and hold on to my jersey, and we'll make sure that you get into the game." So I mean, getting into it was something, and there's it was on major television. It was on ESPN, the main network that night.
The Aces at Duke, is that right?
Aces and Duke, and I got a chance to meet Coach Krzyzewski, which was he was at IU when I was at IU. He was a graduate assistant back in the hinterlands when I did my time at IU, and that was something. And it was one of the best setups of any place that I went. You had an IT guy come and make sure that your connection was fine, and we were in. And what happens? It seems whenever you do a broadcast, anything can happen. And for some unknown reason, the whole IT system for the university, it went out. So when that happened, we had to make other adjustments. And the station WUEV did the Evansville games at that time, and they were pretty high tech. They did everything on a straight computer line, and they had the best of equipment, but they never thought about having to do anything, as you said, the low tech on phone lines. So that was the only alternative when the IT goes down and there's no internet, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no nothing. So you go back to, and I went back to this, and it took a little while. They had to do some jerry rigging in order to get it up, but we got the ball game on, and as I said, I did from about 11 minutes to go in the first half till the end of the ball game. I did it on my cell phone,
like this, talking into.
Matter of fact, I think it was this cell phone, just like this,
and then handing it to Coach Simmons after the game.
After the game, it is. I was very lucky, and he's a great friend of mine, Scott Schreffler, who's a Hall of Famer. That was my color analyst, but he only did home games. So when you went on the road, you're flying solo, and I mean, at least I didn't have to keep handing it back and forth to my color analyst because I was, the only one, so to speak.
So we see those things on the high school level. You never know where you're going or what the situation is. But you're traveling to Duke on the bucket list, thinking this is big time, and you have to use the cell phone.
And I have to use the cell phone just like I've had to use a time or two in high school.
Well, you had the experience.
Broadcast. Yeah, Well, and you know this from doing ball games. Failure is not an option. I mean, you're always looking if something happens. You got to think of it as a chess match, and you're always trying to stay a couple of moves ahead. So if something goes wrong, you have to know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, I'm usually a step behind, so it doesn't work
Yeah.
like it does with Walt, but it worked out well. And you say the IT went out, so the major networks, everybody must have been affected.
Well,
in some way.
it affected everybody. I'm betting that the folks on ESPN TV didn't take out their cell phones though.
I bet not. They found a way.
They found a way.
They found a way. I was thinking about things you've done in the past, and I thought, and I looked it up, and you did. This gentleman was a member of the Washington Generals
hmm
against the Harlem Globetrotters. And tell me about how that came about and what was your experience like?
I've actually played them twice.
Twice.
I was a Washington General the first time, and I was a World All Star the second time because
That's quite a promotion.
The Generals were on hiatus, but it was a blast. It was a lot of fun, and I practiced beforehand. And the second time was a lot better than the first time. Well, there's a few things I can still do, not very well, but one of them is I can, on a basketball floor, if I get warmed up, I can still shoot a little bit.
Yeah.
And the first time I played them, I ended up scoring 4 points, but they were on a couple of layups, and I shot every shot that I did from 3-point. I shot from the right wing, and the first time they took me down at the Jasper Gym, it was the left wing that I shot from. So when they came back the second year, because it was very successful, we had about 4,000 fans for the first game, so that was enough for the Globetrotters to come back. And it was the same head entertainer, Handles is his name, and the second time around, it's like you're laid down a gauntlet. So I knew where I was going to be shooting from, and I practiced.
I've seen a picture. You've got a sweet looking jump shot.
I
don't know whether they go in, but it looks good.
There was I would practice. I was doing Northeast Du Bois game at Valley. It was a holiday tournament, and you had time to kill as you do between sessions. And I asked Coach Jim Jones, who was then the coach at Valley, if I could get a rack of balls and shoot. And that would be fine. And he came out and he sat down while I was shooting, and he goes, "Do you mind if I coach you a little bit?" This is the guy that coached Larry Bird.
Yeah.
And
Larry Bird and Walt Ferber.
Yeah, well, that's the only way we'll be together in the same sentence. But he made a little, he said, "You've got a nice shot," but he made a little adjustment. And anyway, I came out, and the first thing you do in the routine is they give you a shot on the left wing. And it was God takes care of the stupid. I said, and it went up and it went swish, didn't hit anything but the net. And Handles goes, that it's not supposed to happen.
Yeah. So you said as part of the routine. So you're telling me this is staged?
Well, actually, I have the utmost respect for these guys. There's a structure to it, and they have things that they're doing, but they work off the structure.
Yeah.
And they're very, very talented
So they
individuals.
give you some instructions before the game?
Well, they did a little bit.
Don't get ahead.
And the big thing is to have fun with it, and that's what we did. And I had 8 points the second time around in the game, but I
MVP.
I was an all-star, but we still lost. It was it was close, but we lost by 5. We were ahead till about 5 minutes left in the game, and for some reason they were able to come back and win.
I didn't figure you won, because if you had, that would have been national news.
The last time the Globetrotters lost was 1972. And so it's been a while since they have lost a basketball game.
But it was fun.
It was fun. It was great.
At what age were you?
At the time, the first time I was 58, and the second time I was 62. So it's
Yeah. Wow,
And
that's
it's,
amazing.
because you figure it's my last go around on something like that, and you try to make the best of it.
Yeah.
So
Then another honor. Tell me about how you were the one selected to throw out the first pitch at a St. Louis Cardinal game. That's a terrific honor.
well, there's a lot. First of all, one of the stations I worked for, WQKZ, is a Cardinals affiliate. Had been a
Right.
Cardinals affiliate for a long time, and as I said earlier, the one of the few times I almost left, I was on the doorstep of working for them back in the 1980s, going in when Jack Buck was starting to slow down. And the very nice lady who I became very good friends with over the years, Ann Carroll, part of the network, asked, since, I mean, her and I both knew that our years were getting close to being done.
If you're going to do it
Ask
now.
ask if I would mind throwing out a first pitch, and I got to, and it wasn't like they were playing the Sisters of the Poor. I got to throw out a pitch uh, the third week in July, and it was a series between the Cardinals and the Cubs, and that's a little bit of a
It
series
is,
there.
yeah.
But
It is.
that was something, and as I said, I was frightened that I was gonna hit Fred Berger,
Well,
and
we've
that
seen
was
some throws like that.
and I actually worked on that. I stepped off a pitching mound distance in my backyard and worked on throwing. And I was fortunate. I do baseball, and I have a couple of really good pitching coaches. Ray Howard worked with me a little bit, and Travis Lamar, who is the manager of the DuBois County Bombers, and was a pretty good, still is a pretty good pitcher. Worked a bullpen session with me. So when I came in, I went to the mound, and when you're on the mound at Busch Stadium and you're looking, it's looks a lot longer than the distance that it is. It looks like it's about a mile you've got to throw it. And Kiefner was the catcher. Andrew Kiefner was just brought up. Yeah, it was 2 years
2 years
ago.
ago. Okay.
Kiefner was, and he got behind the plate, and I reached back and tried to do my best, my best wind up and pitch, and I threw a strike. And it didn't have a whole lot on it when it got to the plate.
Yeah, 36 miles an hour, but still.
Maybe.
That would be pretty good,
Yeah.
actually. So was your heart pumping?
Oh yeah, it was a
Do
lot
you have
of
this
fun.
on video?
It is, yeah, I've got it. If you go, it is on my Twitter page and on my Facebook page.
Okay.
There's a video of the actual thing. The Cardinals are a first-rate organization, and they about a week after the game, they sent me a video of me throwing out the first pitch, and it was what everybody saw on the jumbotron in the stadium.
Wow. You mentioned Ray Howard, Hall of Famer, of course. When I think of him, I believe, so I played baseball back in the mid to late 70s. I think he was the coach there, if I remember. Jasper was very strong, but so was some Lagodi teams, particularly in the early 70s. But what I remember about going to Ruxer Field, of course, it was the Taj Mahal, still is, of all high school ballparks that I've ever been to. But I don't know how long they continued at Walt, but I mean, I'm talking regional, semi-state, big games, big crowds, and they would have an organist on top of the dugout. And you walk into that park, and it was truly like a
Oh yeah.
minor league stadium. You smelled the popcorn, everything, the hot dogs, and it's just one of the great memories of my childhood. But Ray Howard, of course, obviously a good friend of yours, your broadcast partner, he's seen a lot, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, he has, and as you say, I'm going to agree. I think Ruxer's probably, it's in my top three of most favorite places in the world to be. They do, and it's Terry Gobert who's responsible for that now. I tell you what, his wife Carolyn. Carolyn is the one that takes care of the concessions, so you get all of the stuff you get, and concession wise, and also you go. They have like a gift shop there in the concession stand where you can buy Jasper hats and shirts and sweatshirts, and it is ran probably better than a lot of AA teams out there. So they certainly do an outstanding job.
I don't think there's a bit, well, I know there's not a better baseball program in the state of Indiana than Jasper High School. I mean, you've got to believe that, right? I mean, the way it's run, the success they've had in the single class, in the multi-class system, unmatched.
No, they are, and Ray has certainly seen a lot of things. And one of the things I have always enjoyed, he knows everybody in baseball. He, when I'm going, I've learned to keep my mouth shut and my ears open when we go to a ball game because people will come up and talk to him. I mean, there was a time he stepped away from a broadcast for a couple of moments, and he looked on his cell phone. He says, "I probably ought to take it." It was Tucker Barnard calling him,
Tucker
the
Barnard.
the catcher for the Cincinnati Reds, who he had worked with when he was playing high school ball at Brownsburg. So I mean, he knows everybody. I mean, we ended up doing an Indianapolis Indians game this year, and the president of the ball club immediately came, and I'm sitting at a table with Ray, and the president of the Indians came and sat down with Ray for an hour, and I got to spend most of the Indians game with Ray and the president of the Indianapolis Indians. So he knows a lot of folks, and he has about a gazillion stories.
Well, did he not start the Indiana High School Baseball Hall of
Yes.
Fame there in Jasper, which is beautiful?
It was originally in a hallway at the Holiday Inn in Jasper.
Yeah,
that's
I
where
remember
that's
that.
where it started out. The first year as a fundraiser, Mickey Mantle came in and talked, and it's grown.
That's a pretty good first year.
It's
Yeah.
not bad.
Mickey Mantle.
It's grown to where it's out at Vincennes University Jasper campus, and I try to make a point to get out there every year because it changes, and it is I believe the only standalone state baseball Hall of Fame in the country.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and he is
Responsible.
he is responsible and raised something.
I bet he is. I bet
He has he's been on the Jasper City Council, a longtime teacher at Jasper High School. And a lot of people don't know this, but he was a minister for, I want to say, going on 40 years. He started at Central Christian in Huntingburg, and he had his own congregation in just outside of Santa Claus for almost 35 years. And he's as good a preacher as he is a baseball coach, and I've got a chance to hear several of his sermons, and he's actually got a chance to hear one of mine.
That's what I understand. So you're a part of the ministry as well.
Well, I don't get to do it as much as I used to, but I was in an average probably 10 or 15 times a year in the pulpit. I have a good friend, Larry Langer, who worked with me at the radio station. He was pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Jasper, and they had a shortage of substitute ministers, so I filled in the pulpit for him whenever he was gone. At St. James Lutheran in Holland, I've been in the pulpit a number of times, and if I'm asked, I try to go out and do the best job I can. But I will tell you, I'm much more nervous before getting in the pulpit than any ball game, because that's actually, a ball game is a ball game. It's important, but it's pretty serious stuff when you're in the pulpit.
Yeah. So the year before, leading up to your retirement, over a couple of weeks ago, and to the last day, what was the experience like? And I'll start with this. I know over the years you've been interviewed, yourself, for different things, different accomplishments. But in that last year, a lot of that spotlight was on Walt Ferber for his career and accomplishments. And it had to be, though, a bittersweet time in your life.
It was tough on a whole lot of levels. I love what I do, and one of those things, Father Time catches up with everybody, and I love 99% of what I do, but the hours were getting to the point where I can't do a 20-hour day anymore. It's not feasibly or physically possible. There's a lot of stuff I'm really going to miss. I mean, the people that I get to work with, so I'm going to miss that stuff incredibly. And I don't know. As far as I've done this stuff, to be honest, it's never been about me. I've loved to be able to be around the people that I've been around more than anything else. And you get to go watch sports for free. I mean, and Coach Gobert always used to needle me, when's the last time you paid for a ticket? You know, we don't have to pay for tickets.
Yeah.
We get to see a lot of great stuff, and you get to make a lot of great friends, and you get to make hopefully a little bit of impact on some people in a positive way. So it was that, and uh, I like being the interview. Now I always love talking to you, but I like being the interviewer a lot more than I like being the interviewee.
Yeah, but we find out a lot more about you
Yeah.
when we do it this way, and we appreciate that. So when you think of that last day, because I worked at a place for 23 years, and yours is 42, almost twice as much. You get in the car and you drive out of the parking lot. And I remember my thought was, these were some great times. And
Oh
I'll
yeah,
never drive back into that parking lot, at least in the same frame of mind,
yeah.
ever again. It had to be difficult for you to take that lane out of WITZ onto the highway that day.
It was very tough. There was something that made it easier though. We've had a core of people at that radio station that have been there for forever,
It's amazing.
and
The turnover in radio is really high, but not at
but
WITZ.
we have. There are a number of people that I've been with for since I've been there. You know, as I said, Gene Koontz hired me, and my business manager and the lady that signed the checks ever since I've been there is Jerry Whiteside. I announced that I was going to go, and a little bit after I announced I was going to go, Gene Koontz announced that he was going to be stepping back, which he is going to be doing also, and Jerry Whiteside also announced she's going to be stepping back. So the three of us old horses that have been around forever are stepping away, and that's over 150 years experience between you know
A lot of experience.
between the three of us.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a new group of people that are coming up. It's a really good group of young people, but we still have my buddy Larry Kiefner there. Larry Kiefner has been at the station, and I don't want to get this wrong. I want to say 65 or 66 years, and he just keeps it. His ratings on Sunday are out the roof, and he gets listeners from all over the country. So I mean, it's tough. There are people there that I'm going to miss terribly, but we have very talented people taking over. Melanie Earhart, who's been with us about 15 years, is going to be taking over, and she's going to do a terrific job running that place. And I'm going to give Melanie credit for probably extending my career a little bit because you know I'm a dumb old fart, and you know how technology is changing, and she really nursed me through some of the last changes in the computerization of the business, and she's going to be outstanding. Chris Norton is he's going to be doing a lot of my old job, not all of it, because nobody's stupid enough to do everything that I did. But Chris, I I didn't necessarily handpick him, but one of the things that I've done while I've been at WITS for the last 6 years is when Bob Lovell takes his break, I am a pinch hitter. I do Indiana sports talk usually 3 or 4 times a summer, or if he has a night off during the winter.
Did you do that from the WITC studio?
I know I did that. That comes into being an old fart. I went to Emmis, and I love broadcasting from the Circle in Indianapolis, and being in the studio that Mike Pence, the former vice president, was in, and you work with top professionals there. And anyway, when I was doing this 3 years ago, my school board update guy was Chris Norton, and he was just out of the University of Indianapolis. And I put it in my mind that that's a very talented young man. And I worked with him several times doing sports talk. And anyway, he went on and went to a town in northern Minnesota where it gets a little bit cold. And he was looking to get back to Indiana. And that was announced that we were going to make changes, and we were looking for a person to do some fill-in play-by-play, along with being our news director, Bob Lovell, who's a very, very good friend of mine, who you've interviewed also.
Yeah, well, I was just in those same studios you were talking about 3 days ago.
Yeah, I noticed that on the video. But anyway, Lovell says, call Walt in Jasper. There's an opening down there. You need to get your behind down there. So he called, and I forwarded his stuff to Gene Kuntz, and he ended up bringing Chris down, a very talented young man who is the next voice of the Wildcats. And he moved from news to sports, and we had another very talented young fellow, Corbin Lingenfelter, who's got a voice that I would kill for. And we've got Corbin doing news now, and Chris doing sports. And it's really weird because I'm unemployed for the first time and since 1973, I believe, I've had some sort of position in one way, shape, or form. So, but the people that are going in there they're going to be outstanding.
The last couple of years, I know as you contemplated retirement, we had talked pretty serious stuff. You lost we talked earlier in the show, you lost your mother a year ago this weekend. But your wife, Melanie, had a very serious issue. Tell me about that.
She had, like I said, COVID actually saved her life. COVID-19 did. And as we joke, she's probably the only person that is alive that was saved because of COVID-19. It was the first game of the baseball season. Jasper was supposed to be in Bloomington South. And I didn't think she looked right. I'm not a nurse or a doctor or anything, but I didn't think she looked right. And I bugged her to call Dr. Beckman, Dr. Dean Beckman, our physician. And she said, no, she just needed to sleep a little bit. And I kept bugging her. And she said, you're not going to quit bugging me until I call Doc. And she says, it doesn't matter because Doc's not in. But Sandy, his nurse, I said, Sandy is in. And you can talk to Sandy. So finally she said, you're not going to shut up until I do. So she called, and Sandy said, just to be on the safe side, why don't you don't wait for an ambulance, but have Walt drive you into the hospital. So we did, and it's COVID, and I drive her in, and they kick you out because at that point in time, it was the most severe COVID restrictions. And they kicked me back out to the lot. So I was sitting in the car, and they came back out. A nurse ran out 5 minutes later, says she's having a heart attack on the table, and they're taking her to surgery. Well, they found a little room for me and locked me in this little room and Melanie worked at the hospital. She was on the fifth floor for almost 30 years. And one of the nurses saw me that had worked with her because she'd also worked some in ER. And she had a cell phone, and she on her cell phone called the operating room and was basically keeping me updated on how it was going. She had the Widowmaker heart attack. It was 100% blockage in one, 95% in the second. It's got a 90% fatality rate, but she made it. The good Lord, shined His light on us that day, and she made it. I'm eternally grateful. And it wasn't only that. I have two sons. My oldest son, Nathan, also had a severe health issue. He, like myself, is diabetic, and he had a bad reaction, and he was paralyzed from the waist down for about a 6-month period. I had 2 operations that he went into that we didn't know whether he was going to make it or not, but he has. He's had a miraculous recovery also, so I've been extraordinarily blessed. But, with everything, I will tell you those couple of years, it took a toll. Yeah. I'm fortunate Nathan, not only being my eldest son, he's one of my prevalent board operators, was at the radio station. So probably 50% or more of the games that I broadcast, my oldest son was my engineer.
Hope he did well.
He did. He's the best.
When you say COVID saved your wife, that's because if you would have been doing that game at Bloomington
Mhm.
South, you would have come home that
I would
night.
have come home and I would have found her gone. So no, I mean they said there was no doubt about that. If she would have not been where she was when it happened, she would not have survived. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
And today she's doing fine.
She's doing well. She has some limitations, but all things considered, she's doing wonderfully.
You mentioned Nathan and Jonathan, right?
Yes.
Along the way, two good athletes in their own right.
Yeah. They were something. As I said,
I mean, they weren't a Washington General.
No, Huntingburg Memorial, one of my favorite places. One of the big reasons is I've got the perch up in the corner. I never have, because I love. I've been in that same spot for 40 years.
Yeah.
When I look over my left shoulder, I can see both my boys.
Yeah.
Both Nathan was an Indiana All-State in '93, and Jonathan was an Indiana All-State and Indiana All-Star in 1999. So when I look over my shoulder, I see both of my boys. And as Melanie says, the only other lady that had two sons do that was Mrs. Sherry, who had Dan Sherry and Nathan Sherry, both who played for the Raiders, and were both All-Staters in the early 1980s.
Wow, that's amazing. So travel, I know you've got some plans. We've talked about those going forward in the business, but I'm sure that you and Melanie will try to make a few road trips.
We are. We've got a couple of trips coming up this summer. A little later on, we're going to be heading to Gatlinburg. It's been the place over the years that I can unwind best at, and we're also going to go to Savannah. We've been to Savannah and Tybee Island, and then going to snake our way back up into North Carolina to no, pardon me, yeah, North to go to see our son John. John and his wife Carrie live on the Isle of Palm there. They both they overshot my headlights. I can tell you that. They both have done very, very well. We're going to spend some time with John and Carrie, and the guy that ended up being like my third son lives on Sullivan Island there now. His name's Eric Bowman, who was John's roommate in college for 2 years, and they were anchors on the Indiana State offensive line. Eric transferred from the Naval Academy, and he's done very, very well. So it's basically gonna spend some time with family and with Nathan and Emily and the girls and Bentley just up the road in Jasper. And looking forward to spending a whole lot more time with family because it's when you do 310 events a year, that's not something that you're able to do.
When was the last time you were able to take a road trip like that?
We took, because I knew everything was winding down, we took a trip to see John. It was his 40th birthday, and his wife Carrie pulled off a big surprise party for his 40th. So Melanie and I and Nathan all ended up going to spend 5 days with them, and we're there for the surprise party for them. But otherwise, the last time we had taken any kind of trip at all was 7 years ago to Savannah, and the only reason we took that is Jonathan said, "Pop, you got to get out of Dodge," and he paid for us a trip to Savannah and Tybee Island, which I'm grateful for, and we ended up loving the place. And we're going to go back and need to spend some time. I'm an old river rat. Need to spend some time looking at the water, and I'm looking forward to that. We're also looking to do. I got this from an old buddy of mine, Paul Condry, who runs the Indiana Sports Network up in the northern part of the state. He and his wife every year eat their way up the eastern seaboard. I love, Melanie and I love seafood, and going up and going through Maine and New Hampshire and a lot of places up there, just kind of meandering our way up and through, and just going and not having a time clock on when we had to be back, and just spending a little time seeing stuff.
Sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah. The wristband that Walt wears. Now, if you're out and about and you see Walt at any ball game, he's going to have a wristband. It may not always be white, but sometimes people ask you, why are you wearing that? And you say, well, it's not for my health. Well, it is for your health.
Yeah, I have an aneurysm, and I've had it for a number of years. It was checked out, and it said Dr. Beckman's been my great family doctor for many, many years. And Melanie said, Doc, you made a mistake. It's if it goes, it's not going to kill me, but it's going to be bloody and somewhat painful. So I keep this on because of compression. The compression helps, and if I bump into something, it's not nearly as painful. And we have a new dog that we just got from Jonathan, one of his 13 pups from his dog. And when Josie decides to get a little playful, it doesn't hurt as much when she bangs into it.
Okay. Well, now you know.
Yeah.
See, I mean, who knew? But you know now. So you're welcome for me asking that.
I have color matching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a specific reason, particularly, where was it? Indiana State?
Indiana State. They aren't, and I've got my swoosh today, but Indiana State is an Under Armour school. I've got my.
And they take it seriously.
I've got one of my Indiana State.
Under Armour, right there.
And it's an Under Armour, yeah, right there. Okay. And I didn't think about it, but I had the swoosh, and their SID Seth comes by and goes, we're Under Armour, and I went, didn't think of that. It won't happen again. And but that's why it's there. But hopefully in the next year or so it'll be taken care of, so we can get rid of that.
From a professional perspective, how would Walt Ferber like to be remembered?
Just someone that wanted to make people's lives a little bit better. I mean, I figured out a long time ago what I do is not brain surgery. Mm-hmm. I'm not saving lives on a regular basis. I'm not a politician that's making policy for millions of people. What I do is not the most important thing by any stretch of the imagination, but I would like to think that I made some people's life a little bit better, and that if I came in touch with people, that I was kind and tried to help in any way that I could. So that's nothing grandiose, but that's.
I know a lot of people have come up to you and thanked you over the years. I'm sure particularly in this last year, but I know individually you get a chance to thank people, but you got a little forum here, Walt.
Okay.
I know that it's not the biggest forum in the world, but I know any forum you can get, any stage, you'd love to thank the people who've got you this far.
Well, there's a lot of folks. Growing up, I talked a little bit earlier in the first part about Lee Kelly. He was the general manager at WNAS in New Albany. He had the ability to tell me when I was wrong, and sometimes in life you got to be kicked in the pants a little bit. And if you're smart, people kick you. You learn from your mistakes and you try to get better. He did that, but on the other hand, he backed me in the profession for years and years and years. And whenever I had a professional problem, he was always there to be a sounding board. Was always there to help. And sadly, he passed away a couple of years ago. And one of the nicest things that happened is they renamed his studio WNAS. They renamed it the Lee Kelly Studio, and they did that on the night last year of the Jasper New Albany basketball game. And I was asked to speak at the dedication to that, which meant the world to me. Mm-hmm. So Lee, Charlie Jenkins, who was at WXVW in Jeffersonville, was certainly a good mentor of mine. In Bloomington, Joe Smith, boy, you had to have your I's dotted and T's crossed there. He taught me to do things the right way, and I look forward to seeing Joe. And he just retired from the IU network this year, and he would call me usually once or twice a year and go, can you explain why you and I are still stupid enough to still be doing this after all these years? So there's, from a professional standpoint, there's Joe, Sam Simmermaker in Columbus, who was in there for a short time, and he became still a good friend of mine today. I got to Wits, Bob Simmers, the gold standard as far as broadcasting. I've also had Bob Boyles. Uh, I've had the best color analyst that you could possibly find available. As I left, and Terry Gobert, when Bob Boyles retired, there was only one person that I thought of to take over, and that was Terry. And he did, and we had a lot of fun. And Ray Howard, who we talked about, has been extraordinarily good to me. Of course, Earl Metzger, Gene Kuntz, who I talked about earlier, allowed me to keep the same platform for 42 years, which is unheard of. And most of all, I have been in a, Melanie, I overshot my headlights big time. When she actually went out on a date with me, I was kind of shocked. But we've been together for 42 years, and as you can see with all the stuff that I've done, and you know that because you do the same things too, you're gone a lot. And she has smiled and left the light on for me and has allowed me to pursue my passion over that period of time. And this business has caused a lot of divorces. And she stayed with me, and my sons, Nathan and John, have put up with me being gone a lot because of that. So, I have the world to thank for them. But I've been a very, very lucky person, and I certainly appreciate every blessing that's been bestowed.
And a lot of the people watching and listening, you've got to thank them too.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
Because those are people who really enjoyed your work, but at the same time paid your paycheck.
Well, that, and I'm going to say that too. And I've had sponsors, many sponsors that have been loyal to me for 40 years. And I've had good friends that have been my sponsors. I talk a little bit about Keith Henninger of Henninger Beverage. Dr. Daniel Eby, I've helped take care of his advertising for years and years and years. And you can go down the line of people that have allowed me to help with their businesses for all those years.
You left the door open for me to ask this question. Where was your first date with Melanie? Are you free to talk about that?
Yes, I am. It was.
I'm always curious.
It was not that. It was Al Pillsbury, who I did baseball with, and also did basketball with. I did tape delay basketball with him. He had a birthday on December 6th. Jim Barron, who was our afternoon guy at the time, they both had birthdays on December 6th. They had it the same day. So they threw a birthday party, or there was a birthday party at Al's apartment, and she accompanied me to the birthday party. That was our exciting first date, and we had many,
How did you meet? Was that through a mutual friend?
She was my banker.
That's right.
She was my banker, and it was one of those things that it's happened over a period of time that she was the one. And if you like doing business with someone, that's who you kept going to. And our conversation would get, each time I went there, would get a little bit longer. And I had my pride and joy when I got to Jasper. I had a little sports car, at least it was a little Mazda RX-3, and it died because nobody took care of Wankel engines, which was in the and it died, and I had to get another car. So I called her and
gotta have money,
and I didn't know a whole lot of people, so I said I need to get a used car. Where do I go? And I need you to set aside X amount of money for me. I'm gonna go get another vehicle. So she did that, and our conversations got a little more extended, and finally got up the courage to ask her for a date, and she said, surprisingly, said yes.
Yeah.
And we've been together ever since.
So if we had online banking back then, you'd just be an old single guy.
Probably.
Probably.
Because nobody else, certainly no one that pretty or intelligent, would have put up with me.
Your form right here, Walt, as we wind down, just anything we didn't talk about, any questions we didn't ask, or anything that you would like to bring up?
You're a consummate interviewer. And I tell you, that, as I said, the thing I'm going to miss as you get older, I mean, you still, if you're covering, you want your team to win. You get attached to them, you want to win, but the wins and losses over the years mean less and less. I mean, you don't want to, but the things that are important
become more and more important.
Yeah, right. The people that you have a chance to touch base with, like yourself, I always look forward to seeing you, and the couple of times a year that we run into one another. The people that the other guys who go out and do this stuff on a nightly basis. One of my best buddies is Kurt Goodsell. Back in Dubois, he's great, and we have become really good friends because we understand what the other guy's going through, and we, as I say, we don't make enough money to be haughty and get what you mean. And you know, Kurt and like yourself, the one thing is, if you go and you have trouble, you know you're going to have people that aren't going to try to get you off the air, but are going to try to get you on the air. There's coaches that you get attached to and fans that you run into. So it's those people that I'm really going to miss.
So 50 years in the broadcast industry, going back to your sophomore year in high school, basically. Congratulations on your retirement, but more so, I look forward to your happiness. I know you got a lot going on, and good luck to you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to starting the next chapter.
And thank you for coming back for part 2.
I love the library here.
Walt Ferber, our Indiana neighbor broadcast legend. Thank you so much for watching.